I don't know what there is. I never get enough of these Reno videos. Anyway. Anyway, let's get down to shop and get busy. We have work to do on this plane. Now, special thanks to Paul Winter. Look what he sends me here. The English Aero Modeler. It's September 78. Who's this young guy? Anyway, we treasure these old magazines, believe me. And the stories. There's old Snaggletooth there. Now, if there's anybody out there that has never seen this magazine and they really want to borrow it, believe me, this is the only copy I can ever get my hands on. You just can't go to the store and buy one of these, but I'll be glad to loan it. Has a lot of the drawings, making the molds. Just a great magazine. And I will loan it out for a pizza. Now, another thing from England that we have, boy, and I love these magazines. I mean, I know people really do enjoy watching TV and maybe, you know, other activities like that. Nice sedate activities, but there's nothing better than sitting around at night with the Reno videos on the screen, doing some modeling, and having some magazines to read on your coffee break. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, this is the P-51 Beguine. This is actually the plane that crashed at the Cleveland Air Races and ended the Cleveland Air Races. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, it's in the February issue. Look at this. Now listen, Paul Winter, paybacks are a Butch, you know, or a Mary or something. Get me that get me that issue. There's a nice set of exhaust manifolds there. Anyway, love these magazines. These are really good. P-51s, Air Cobras, everything. And the stories, a lot of times you don't see much in the pictures, and you read the story, and you read how incredible some of these restorations are. They're just unbelievable. These things come out of the jungles of New Guinea or something. They're in 1,000 pieces, and 2 years later, they're at Reno. This full-page centerfold spread, the Gunfighter. Lefty Gardner's P-38. That is a nice, that would look nice up in my Spitfire bedroom. Yeah, I love this wall art, boy. This is something Karen and I could start collecting this anytime. We have plenty of walls up in that Spitfire bedroom. Typhoons. Alright, let's get to work. Enough videos. Oh, on the last tape we worked out this little scoop area. This is dried and it's ready to sand. I also, while I had the paint in the airbrush in the spray gun, I just hit this and I hit around the canopy here. So one of the things this does, it tends to show you the flaws. In this case you can see there's a little flaw there. So the next thing I want to do, because we have the paint already in the gun, I could just hit this with the sandpaper with some maybe 320 on a block, clean these edges up. Again, I'm looking for these nice clean areas. Kind of like the way that scoop worked out. That was really time consuming getting that in, and really I can just picture what it would be like trying to carve that out of balsa wood. Now we have all hard edges, and now maybe 1 or 2 sandings at a primer, and that'll be ready for, well, the final finish that we're going to put on a fuselage. Now, a couple of things with a big block, a big soft block like this. This is only 1/4 inch wood. I can pick up any high spots right away that I might have overlooked in sanding this out. Right away, I see a high spot coming up there that I didn't see. And I want to work right on those edges more than anything else. See the high edges coming up? That's what the primer allows you to do. Turn turned out to work real well. The machinist ruler, because it has a little bit of give to it, and some sticky back paper, because I want to get all these corners and edges done. In the final finish, I want to have a really defined, clear edge there. Now, and having the right sanding tools makes a job like this, doable. Just the fact that you can do it. Now, up in here, I'm going to have to make a tool that thickness because, see, I can see I have a high spot right there. So I want to get a tool. I'll figure out what I want to use. Just that thickness so I can get this blend right at the tip. To make a tool with a little bit of a taper in this, I want to get some sticky back paper. And I want to put a piece of maybe 64th plywood on the edge so I have hard corners in here. Because what I'm going to do is all the while we're doing filling, this will get me that nice little corner and edge right in there. And without this tool, I won't be able to get, I'll wind up with a belly in there. Making up little sanding tools for little special areas of the plane, it's something a lot of people try to avoid like the plague, when it really only takes a minute or so. By the way, that's 16th plywood on there, so I have a little more support. I'm trying to get this corner and edge real nice. Making up some of these little sanding tools, no matter what project you're working on, you just throw them in a box. And at the end of the project, at least you have these tools. I use up all my scrap balsa, especially the stuff that's usually get this amount of balsa with every order that's a little harder than what you want to use. When you put this on, obviously you want that corner, and the next thing, as soon as you wear that out, just move it over, move it over, move it over, and you get full use out of the sandpaper. It's the sticky back. This is 220 sticky back. That'll give me a nice cut on that little scoop. And I'll have a tool. I'll throw it in my box with all the other tools. An idea of how many different sanding tools, tubes, dowels, drills, little pieces like this, and I save them all. Guide this real carefully in that area because I know I'm going to pick up a hard spot here. Now imagine doing this with balsa. Those edges would be shot by now. And I've tried over the years to make really cool scoops and cardinals. I know Midgley has, and usually by the time you get done buffing out the plane, oh my God. Okay, this looks like it's working fine. This will give me that little blend. Just one more little detail, and I'm trying to get as many little details on this as I can. Even a small area like that, when it's not right, and if this doesn't make a nice true blend, that's going to ruin all the effort that we put into making that scoop. So what I'll do while I'm waiting now, and I'm going to work on the canopy a little bit here, I'll put another coat of primer on this just to start filling in all the little dings and dangs. You can see there's a little spot up there. Because once you put it on, you can take it right off. It's no problem at all. And usually in the shop conditions here, if I leave it inside to dry, like here we are, an hour later I can sand it. But it's best, of course, to let it dry overnight. Any primer is always good to let it dry overnight. But this scoop was one of the defining features I really wanted to get right. And of course, now that we have a mold, anybody that wants to do something, this wouldn't even look bad on an SV11 or on a, one of the Fancher planes or something. It wouldn't even matter. As an example, what it allows you to see, even a quick coat of primer. Now, don't forget, this has already been fiberglass, so what that tells me is, hello, somebody put me, put your fingernail in there and never even knew it. I always like to scuff up the first coat before putting on another coat. That's always a good way to handle this kind of an operation. Yeah, that would look good even on a Cardinal, on Midgley's plane, hey. Penalty of sanding wet primer that hasn't dried overnight, of course, is it just gums up the sandpaper, but if you sand it soft. The trick to sanding soft primer is use relatively rough paper like 220 and not a lot of pressure. Don't gouge it out. Then be prepared to throw some paper away. Now, if we were doing this with primer that was dry overnight, well, it'd be powdering off. Area like around the canopy. We know we're going to have an edge in there. And we know the primer is soft, so we may as well get resigned to the fact that we're going to eat some sandpaper up doing this. But I could work on that lip. And so by the time it comes time to do the actual real finish, I'll have many of these little imperfections filled, especially around this little edge where we did the air epoxy light around the edge. See, what I usually do is when I know a day like today, I don't have much of the day left to work, I only have an hour or so, what I try to do is rather than start a big project, something that's going to be all-consuming, just detail out or put some time into the detailing of little parts like this. And then when I get a big block of time, half a day or whatever, then I'd rather be doing a big project like a layup, a mold, or whatever. But when I have small blocks of time, I like to do detailing. Now you can see just how many little high spots there are on this. But the second coat of primer will take care of a lot of that. All right, and that's going to be, once that dries, we'll detail that out even further. You know, nice and handy if you can put it up by a heating vent to dry until the next day that we work on it. Now, this is all dried up, and what I'm trying to do is figure out exactly how I want to make these, what amount to be the Griffin blisters. When you mount the Griffin in a P-51 fuselage, the valve covers stick out and you need these blisters sticking out the side. And that's the next thing I need to figure out if I'm going to carve them, mold them, I don't know what I'm going to do here. Need to think about this a little bit. That scoop really worked out well. That's one of the few things I really totally satisfied with that scoop. Now, if you look at the real plane, obviously we can't make the equivalent of a scale model. It's just not possible because this nose section is totally different. And if we do it similar to the Spitfire, that's a relatively easy way to do it. But again, this is the kind of thing I need to make a couple little test parts up and just see if it's going to be practical to do this. You can get some idea of just how that looks on the real plane, but our nose is about twice that length. And we need to take into account where the exhaust stacks are going to go. This takes a little bit of compromise, to say the least. The easiest way I can always do this is just I need to get one of the exhaust stacks, get a rough idea of where I want to position it, and then make up at least a paper pattern of what this shape ultimately will look like. And we can just go through our bag of parts, get out some representative stacks. They don't have to be perfect. None of these come out perfect. You always need to sand them and grind on them. But I need at least one here to make up. This one has the trimming part all done. At least get the location of where this is going to be. That'll actually go on a model. I decided the best way for me to do this is I run this little carbon fiber reinforcement in the back and then use up casting resin on these. It sands easier, and of course you always want to sand it before you paint it. You always want to roughen up epoxy before you, and I would suggest Brodac primer, 2 or 3 coats as a good way to do that. Obviously, you know, laying these out, they're really never going to be in a scale location. But anyway, I'll look at this from a lot of different angles. And too far back. So you never really know if it's going a little further forward, a little further back. Now I want to make sure at this point in time I'm going to mark where my Uniflow vent is so I don't put this and have to put the Uniflow vent in some crazy spot that'll interfere with this. So I can still maneuver this around. In fact, this should be a little further up. So the next thing I'll do is mark up where that Uniflow vent is going to go, because that we know has to be in a very predictable location. I know this Uniflow pipe is going to need to be as close to the mount as possible and as close to the back of the motor as possible. So I've taken a pin and I'm just working my way through. You know how many times I've done this and the pin's gone right into my hands? Okay, so now I know I want to leave that area clear. That'll eventually, I guess I could drill it out right now even for the 1/8 inch tubing. It's amazing how quick you jump when you stick a pin in the heel of your hand. Okay, so we've got that permanent location now for the Uniflow vent. Then drill that. I always like to use the little wizard. And that bit leaves just about the right hole that we're going to need for that Uniflow vent. But needless to say, I don't want to put that Uniflow vent until the plane is all buffed out, finished, has all the stacks and everything on it. That'll be one of the last things we deal with. But now I know where that's going to be. Now I can lay out all my valve covers and exhausts. It just worked out real nice. That scoop actually will act as a little bit of a reinforcement there anyway. Now that was, you know, for now that was one of the successful things. I really like the way that scoop came out. Every night when I go finish for the night, I kind of hold it and look down the scoop and ooh, 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 you know. You do that too, I know. Now I can't really settle on, I know it can't go up that far, so I got to kind of settle on, do I want it around the second? About even with the second exhaust is going to do it for this. I think back to when we did these very similar on the Griffin powered Seaflyer. Similar, so the first thing I want to do is kind of make up a pattern that'll go around those exhausts and then possibly carve it oversize and then whittle it down until it looks like it's similar to what we want for the real model. I need to also take a look at the length here. They're much longer than when the Griffin was mounted in a Spitfire. They seem longer and narrower. From this angle, they even look longer. Start with some definitive positioning of this. And now I'll get a hunk of paper or cardboard and make up a pattern, what I think this shape is going to look like ultimately. Again, this is going to need a lot of fine-tuning and a lot of back and forth, but basically have to start somewhere. To start with something like a rough pattern. Again, the trick is start oversize until you have the shape that you really want. Now I'm guessing, just by looking at this, that if I start with a piece of 3/8, I've got to figure in my mind that this is going to come out this way. So it's obviously going to be longer than 3. I better start with 1/2 inch. I need to cut a couple of pieces, just rough them out. Scrap piece of 1 inch so I can just cut this way oversized. Maybe I can even get 2 pieces out of it. Always like to use up the scraps of this is the best soft block that I have, because I want to do a lot of carving and hollowing and stuff, so I don't want to start with something that I'm not going to be able to do a nice carving job on. I cut that piece in half, so I have 2 roughly 1/2 inch pieces that I can start making my cutouts from, start shaping it up. Okay, now I need to start looking at exactly what part of this I want to cut away. I'm obviously going to have to take a lot of this material out of the back, and I want to get a rough idea first of all if this is going to be a thick enough block, because that's got quite a curve up there and it's going to end with nothing. So this whole part, I might be able to scoop that out. I'm going to try to do this on the belt sander. I think I can scoop some of that out right on the belt sander by putting some of that curve in there, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the way this will work. Originally started with this piece a lot bigger. You can see what I've done. I've taken a piece off, and again I started out with the piece oversized. And I've gotten it, well, it may still be a little big. Maybe just still a little big. Now what I'm going to do is take some of the front off. I'm whittling this down to where I'm happy with the size. You know, I have that kind of hollowed out. Starting to whittle down to where it looks, well, almost right. I wouldn't say right yet. Okay, now the next thing is I want to get this angle in. Otherwise this would V up, because the real valve covers go off at an angle. Now to just get some of that roughed in, I'll take it over to the sanding table. Just really try to dress this off little by little by little, because I know when I put that on there, I want to have that angle that's very similar, not scale, but similar to the real model, the real plane. It's kind of a funky shape. And I'll just go, this is the reason I always start off making it oversized. Oversized, whoop, there it goes. And you're probably saying, why doesn't he edit that out? Because then the video isn't real. In real life, you do drop things on the floor, and your wife does come down and tell you it's supper, which I'm about ready for the big call, I call it. Wendy, time for supper. And then she'll tell me, you have 5 minutes. You have 1 minute. And then the lights start going on and off. I'm sure you've all been through that. Okay, roughly, that's what we're, similar to what we're looking for. One of the things I realized in carving this up and looking back at the picture, that I've made it out of, yeah, I should have left it in a 1-inch piece and just cut another one. 1/2 inch is not going to be big enough. What I'm going to wind up needing is probably 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to go get another piece of scrap. But now I have hopefully located this outside dimension. And I'm kind of satisfied with the way that looks. So what I'm going to do is just trace this out. In other words, I can take this piece now and just make an adjustment, not even an adjustment, just make a new piece. Because again, I want to start with, whoops, and I'll cut 2 pieces out, and I'm going to need either 3/4 or 1 inch, whatever I can find in scrap here, but thicker. See, and you don't really know this. This is the kind of thing you don't know until you carve one up, and you say, see, it should stick out a little further like that, but by being too far back, At least I've developed a little bit of an evolutionary process here. I know I'm not going to start with 1/2 inch anymore, and in doing it this way, by starting with an oversized piece and working your way down, I just find this to be the easiest way to work on it. Okay, now we're going to basically go through the same thing with a 1-inch block. I'm going to go over to the belt sander, run that over on the wheel, and try to take some of that material off. That seemed to have worked on the smaller blocks. I don't know why it wouldn't work on this block. I want to start with the part. Even though this is oversized, I want to leave just a little bit of a lip on the side that's going to go up against the blisters. You can see how big this is now. And the rest of this now I can just rough cut away. Now obviously a good time for a brand new XL blade. Anytime you're going to do a carving job, you really don't want to be using up old blades. Now I know a lot of this, I may as well just get rid of this whole corner. A lot of this is going to have to come off. I really should have left the first piece 1 inch and be done with it. Now, I know the exhausts need to get covered by a little bit of a lip, but then this kind of tapers back. So I can just put a little bit of a taper in the back, rough it in. See, little by little, I just try to, and I go over and look at that picture a little bit, get an idea of what would be underneath here. Would be a valve cover. Picture, I mean, everybody, when you were a kid, you had your 55 Chevy with your valve covers chromed and 283 with a 4-barrel. Anyway, This is just, now I'm going to have to just spend quite a bit of time going back to the picture. How fat is that? How big is it? Little by little, this is starting to take a life of its own, a little bit of a scale shape. But we are coming up on the end of the day, so I want to break this off at a logical point because I'm obviously not going to get this job finished. So I always try to break it off at a point that makes sense, rather than like just drop the part and forget where I am. Anyway, what I thought I'd do is try to rough out the mirror image other side of this. Maybe that's all I'll get done tonight. And I want to think about, see, while I'm relaxing tonight, I want to think of how I want to do this. Do I want to just carve up 4 more of these or 10 more of these, or maybe it would pay to make a mold? I don't know. But that's all coming. We all just want to think about how I want to do this. Once I get a matched pair, I was trying to make, I'd need to make a minimum of 4, but I'd like, obviously, other people, including Elliot, are going to be building a plane. And the first thing they're going to do is have me carving these up. Well, sometimes it is easier to just make a mold. Well, we're certainly getting close. We're not there yet, but we're close. Looks really, I think, prototypical with that scoop right in the middle where it is on a real model. Next job, of course, and that's the last thing I'm going to get to do today, is just carve the matching mirror image part. Looks like I have this one to work off, and I can kind of use this for a pattern. We're real close. And the reason for leaving it even now a little oversized, because if I make this one a little too small, then I can just make this one smaller. It's a good old-fashioned trick. Anyway, these look about right, and I'm really not unhappy the way they worked out. I remember doing that Spitfire one. Wow, was that Seafire? What a load of work that was. What's a help here is I can line this part up with this part, and I can get an idea of just roughly what the thickness is. In fact, right here, I can just interpolate that dimension out on here. The trick, whenever you need to marry 2 parts together, the trick is to look at them from all angles and make the bigger ones. You know, in this case, this one is a little bigger than this one, so we'll sand this one. In case of the length, well, they look pretty good, but whatever, here back here, one is bigger than the other, so we'll always dress off the bigger of the 2 to match the smaller of the 2. You can hold these, I'm referencing off the exhausts. Whichever is the bigger of the 2, because these have this curve in here, it's a little deceptive. Look at this, I just broke my part on camera. I don't believe this. Okay, it's not a big deal. Look at this, the CA. There's just a 1 second of your life. You want to drop a CA, it won't come out. Unbelievable. Now, what I thought of doing, I was going to go over and make a shell of the nose, but I looked over there and I already have, this is not the shell that belongs on the plane, but it just happens that the Griffin blisters are a pretty decent fit. Not great, but close enough, because when we're going to mold these, of course it won't really matter, we're going to cut these out and somehow attach them, we don't know yet. So just having an extra shell like this, I'll just use this, and this will save me from having to mold up another piece of wood. Oh, with that piece laying right on there, again, can you imagine? It took me about 3 hours or something to carve these whole things up. I mean, once I have this mold made, not only that, for other people are going to be doing, I hope. Just heard from James Mills today, and he is all wound up to make a Voodoo. And we may be able to supply him with some little manifolds or a little carbon cockpit or something like that. Boy, once somebody makes the mold, and once we make this mold, of course, and we'll finish this. I don't know if we're going to get a finish on it tonight, that's for sure, but tomorrow we'll get it finished, harden it with thin CA, prime it, whatever. Yeah, that's going to work okay. I think that'll be fine. Okay, now there's just another piece of scrap. I don't know how far. We're going to have to go up a couple inches. I can use that. And obviously this will be the plug. And we'll have a choice here of making a hard mold or a soft mold. We can do it either way, actually. Next thing I want to do is seal up all the edges. And again, we're right at the end of the day. I probably ain't going to put too much more done on this, but I always try to end at some kind of a logical spot, but obviously sometimes it doesn't work. But if this mold works out the way I'd like, we'll never have to carve Griffin blisters again. And once that area is hardened up with a couple of coats of CA, you just put on some thick CA. Never use kicker. Just use the dust in the paper towel to kick it off. We'll give that a light sanding. Prime it with Rodak primer, and we're done for the day. And the thing is, once you stop the rag, it's glued in place. Usually you need about 3 coats of this. Whoop, whoop, there it goes. Most important thing is just to get a hard shell surface on here so that, and it's scuffed up well so that the Brodak primer sticks reasonably well. Originally thought of cutting this in pieces and making a hard mold, but it looks like, after thinking about this for a while, the easiest of all possibilities is going to be just to make a rubber, slice this off and make a rubber box mold. Yeah, with 2 coats it's starting to have a little shine on it. And 1 more coat ought to do it. Yeah, the first coat that I brushed on the Brodak primer, this is dry. I let it dry overnight. All I need to do now is just dust this off. I don't need to do any reshaping as such, but just get a little bit of a smooth surface on this. As soon as I see I'm going through, in fact, I'll put another coat on. Just start to get the edges coming through, and I'll lay on another coat. And nice that powder's off. Okay, I'll get 1 more coat of Brodak primer on here, and then this will be ready to box up the mold. But it'll save a lot of carving and sanding and finishing and matching and mating and, well, not mating, but now when that dries, that'll be ready for our little box mold. Last thing before building a box here, I always like to give on a rubber mold just to coat a little wax. It kind of polishes up the Brodak primer. And it's not like we need this because we're going to have to get rid of the smooth shine. Oh man, it's fun, I don't believe it. Dr. Molding. Get a little idea with, see, this is really unnecessary. We could leave that, but I just like the way it releases on a rubber mold. When it's smooth like this, just give me a little bit of an advantage. Alright, now next thing I got to do is cut this and make a box. And we won't do a whole lot of this on tape. This is kind of standard the way we've done all of our molds. Okay, and from that, obviously, I need to cut the parts that are going to make the box. Now, it may sound like a simple thing, but I've found a lot of time saving by just making a box with each edge overlapping. And I get all the corners 90 degrees on the belt sander, and I just snap them right in. I don't have to ever trim them off, since they're only there temporarily. Ready to fill with rubber. next couple of tricks that I've found. I have a little heat lamp, like the thing they have in McDonald's, to heat the rubber just slightly now. I've tried nuking it for 1 minute. That didn't seem as effective as heating it with the heat lamp. The heat lamp seems to bring up the bubbles very quickly. And then what I found really works well, I have a little Tupperware vacuum chamber. I put the mold in the vacuum chamber for about 10 minutes. Just let the pump run. Even at a low pressure. If you don't have that, you could hook a shop vac to it. It wouldn't even matter. Just a little Tupperware container. That seems to get rid of a lot of the problems, like the air bubbles, and I'm just popping them as they come up. Anyway, I know John Grisby in Texas, he's making up little profile carbon gear, and he wanted to know a bunch of the little tips. Well, it's convenient now I have enough of this video. I can send him some of this, or something very similar. And the event will have more and more unique products. Larry Cunningham's working on some cool stuff. Every person that adds their little 2 cents in, we all get richer. But these are 2 good tricks. Heat the rubber, get rid of as many of the air bubbles as you can, and put it in a little vacuum chamber. Both of those seem to really make a big difference. One of the little tricks that I've learned that have really worked well, and I know they'll help people like John Grisby, is by sinking in. I almost covered the whole mold. And I just wanted to get a little more thickness in the center, so I just shoved some shims in down the side and just pin them in. And what that does, it raises the level of the rubber. Another trick I've learned, and boy, I've paid the hard price on this. I always used to scrape out every drop of the last bit. You know what? Here's what I do with it now. Deep six it. I'll tell you why. What's been happening is the last little bit doesn't seem as well stirred as the rest, and it leaves a skin along the top that's just like sticky, and it never goes away. So, alright, it's ready for the vacuum little chamber. A real low tech, just a piece of Tupperware with a fitting on it, a vacuum bag fitting. Run into the pump, and I don't even need to pull. A couple of pounds of pressure is all it needs. I don't need to pull more than about 4 or 5 pounds. In about 5 minutes, now it's always good to heat the rubber first, at least I find this to be. Put it in while the rubber's warm and suck the vacuum on it. And that seems to result in almost no air bubbles 90% of the time. I wanted to show this on tape while we're vacuum bagging it. I make this, the original Spitfire mold is for all purposes worn out, so I decided I'm going to make a brand new one. I'll make a hard mold. This will be a good experience, and I just want to show how how frustrating it is when you get one bubble. Look at where the bubble is. It's got to be right in a spot. You're going to see that in the final part, but it's just so aggravating. Anyway, just thought I'd show this. That's the reason I heat the stuff and vacuum bag it from this point on. Now we'll take a break. In today's mail, I got a real nice set of photos from Watt Moore. And we know who this is, Kent Ticer with Dago Red. Oh man, Larry Drawn giving him a lunch. The late Bob Barron flying his time machine at the Huntersville site. Picture Kent Ticer trying to sell Bob Barron a used car. Now he's talking about his plane on Dago Red. This is the flying site at Center Area Rock Hill. Glad I can talk English. The Huntersville, North Carolina, 3 paved circles, 1 grass, so that looks like a nice area. We're going to be getting on video as soon as the weather breaks on new flying site, 4 paved circles. These are some of the shots of the Stellers family doing a build and fly session in November '99 at Rock Hill, where a partially built Brodak basic trainer kit is used in such a way that a parent and child can build a plane, paint it, and fly it all in about an hour and a half to 2 hours. That looks real nice. Anyway, that looks like something that we all should be doing more of. Funny, Watt Moore says, here's a crash repair on a Skyray. Who needs Windy? Windy who? He's got the clamps going and everything. And in Watt's note he says, you know, Windy, you think you're the only guy that knows how to fix things. Baloney. Watt Moore is a master, and I'm going to take over the column. Look at this, he's got the clamp. He knows all the tricks, boy. Check this out. Look at this, he's got the clamps going, got the glue going. What I have found over the years, though, that it's much better not to crash than to know how to fix things. Look at this, C-clamps, pipe fitting. This stuff can be done, though. Actually, I would have used some of these in my crash repair column. Now, of course, the final thing that we all want to know is when you get done, Watt. I mean, it looks like he's pretty well done there. When you're done, there it is. The amazing Watt Crash Repair Moore, put Windy out of business Moore. There's another little set of pictures here of most of them of Kevin Stewart, some of them of Kevin Stewart, learning to fly, and look at this. Got the Cincinnati Bengals Tiger plane. Learning to fly in 1996. I think that's about the time I was learning how to fly. And then he grows up to be the king of stunt. Look at this, making me want to go flying. You know what happens? You're in a winter this whole time. You're sitting here in a winter and freezing and shoveling snow and all this stuff. Here's Kevin getting his first trophy or first plaque or a free coupon to the AMP for minoxidil. I don't know what he's getting here. Anyway, Watt, we really appreciate you sending us all these pictures. And of course the master, the Nats champ. Now see, this is what I like to see. In the end, it turns out here he is with Warren Tiart receiving his junior national championship. And I'm jealous, Watt. I'm jealous. Your grandchildren look better looking than you. They look better looking than me. The only thing I can say, Watt, is this year you come to Brodax, you know, I don't mind picking up your fingers off the parking lot, but there is no cutting your fingers off. Look at the name of the plane, Miss Olivia. And daughter molding a fiberglass cowling saying, Windy, who needs Windy? This with the best picture I have of Kevin Stewart here getting his head pounded by Windy. Comb that hair, boy. Anyway, thanks a lot, Watt, for the photos. Okay, today, and this is all we're going to do today. The reason I came down here today is I wanted to be sure I had a good cavity, and that certainly will be acceptable. I'll obviously save the plug. This plug can go in a box. I can save this. Of course, a lot of the people that are using the little manifolds might want to take advantage of having these little blisters too. We'll always save the plug, of course. We can always remake this if we wear it out. Doubt if we'll wear it out, but all right. Looks like so. One thing I know we have. I'll trim this all off camera. One thing I know we have now. We have a good plug for our Griffin blisters. And I think whenever we're going to do another little layup day, this will really make us some nice little parts. And imagine having to carve all these things. Oh. And then when they're balsa wood, as soon as you touch this, right here, you go to pick up the plane, you put a little dent in there, and at least if they're composite, there's some chance that they'll be a little more bulletproof anyway. Some people that are following through it, what I do, this mold got real thin at the edge. What I'll do when I go to lay this up, if this is a problem, what I do is just make what I call a little garage. Put this on a piece of wood and put two little blocks along the side, and then you can press on that as hard as you want to. It's no problem at all. Just a quick box I made from scrap wood, and you can see what it does is while you're laying up the part, it gives you support, and when you want to remove the part, you can peel it back and get the part out. And that's ready. Tomorrow we're going to do a lot of layups.
So if I do it once.
Right, now what? Elliot Scott's here. Another one of his illustrious visits to the United States, making up some parts. He's going to make himself a set of parts and hopefully make me a set. And we're going to let him be the first one to lay up this mold. So we want 5 layers. This is herringbone, lightweight. I call it herringbone. It's satin weave. Every company names it something else, but it's very drapeable. In other words, it'll fit in all the curves and angles and things like that. So
very easily. This hasn't got any, or has it got some stuff on it?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Just any little dust that's on there, or little imperfections. We won't care. These parts have to be sanded. And we don't really need a glass-like finish on it. They need to be sanded so they get a paint tooth.
But the release themselves, we don't...
Totally release by itself. A rubber mold, this kind of silicone rubber releases by itself. You almost never lose a part with this. Okay, step 1, paint the whole mold. Get the whole mold painted with resin.
Or black treacle if you have it to hand.
Yeah. I think that was the coffee that Karen made me this morning, what's left of it. Paint the whole mold. Now when you do this kind of layup on the rubber, you really have to just lay it in. You can't be cute, you know what I mean?
Yep.
You gotta globber it in and then force it up through. Each time we're gonna put, cut 10 pieces?
Yep.
Okay, 5 thick I know will result because I made those little chin scoops and stuff. There'll be no problem. There'll be plenty thick if we need to grind or sand away. Go out past the end of the mold by about, a 1/4 of an inch or so, because what happens otherwise, the edges are dry. You know what I mean? When you get to the edge, it'll be all dried little pieces.
Okay, I can do that.
Drop the cloth on and just let it force the resin up right through. It's always better to do it this way than to put the resin on top and try to force it down. It always seems to come up a lot easier than go down.
Well, you also don't know whether you've actually got it all the way through, do you?
Right, exactly. Now, if you were doing a gel coat part where you want the outside to be real shiny and smooth, well, a little part like this, we're going to need to sand the heck out of it with rough paper to get a tooth.
Yeah,
and it's that, right, without that tooth, paint will be just coming off like saran wrap, so. Just put each layer through on the layer behind it and let the resin come up through. You don't have to add any resin.
The great thing about the dye is you can see it more easily too. There's no messing about whether it's come through or not. You know. You can see.
You add a layer, it'll just get, and if it doesn't, just wait a second, let it come up and try to squeeze it out over the edges. I've found that to be just the easiest way to do it. Now, what happened with this mold, and it was a shame, is we didn't have the rubber fully cured, and part of this didn't release the way I like. I also had too much of an angle in here, and so what I'm doing, I'm making a little modification to the mold, putting more of a radius so I don't get any wrinkles in the cloth around there. It's not a big deal. I'm going to let this dry, sand it out, remake the box, and remake the rubber. That's one thing nice about the rubber molds. It's only a couple hours and you can make a whole new one, but I always save the plugs just for that reason, and we'll see how the new parts come out tomorrow. I just want to put this up by the heat lamp because I want to get this part to dry up as quickly as possible, usually half an hour or so. That'll be ready to pour the other part of the mold, the new replacement mold. I even have these original parts. We made a couple of sets of these. And what I wanted to do, because, again, we want to change this, it's going to require remaking the mold, and that's not a big deal, by the way. But it also gives me another chance. I can take these apart now. See, I did these with 3 layers of 1.5 ounces, and I can try one, make a pair with 2, a pair with 4, see how much thickness I need. I also now can lay these in place right on the plane itself and see, are they going to be too big, too small, are they going to line up nice? Because any change I need to make to the mold, I can make changes as long as I'm going to recast the mold. You know what this gives me a chance to do if I decide I want to make any other changes to this mold, and it looks like we're not going to make any changes, but let's say for instance I decided this was a little bit too big or too small, too long, too short. While I have that mold ready to recast, I can make all those changes very conveniently. Just these little details, just these little things here. If I had to make these over and over out of pieces of balsa wood or dowel, once I have these molds done, it'll be very easy to reproduce them. So I want to get this part of it. I don't want to live with having flaws in the mold and things like that. This is one of the things I find. It's nice with a plug. Oops. See, as I'm saying it, I dug the little thing in. But I'm going to sand most of that off anyway. I want to get most of this just relatively smooth before I put the Brodack primer on. You're having one little bad spot in a mold. A lot of times, if you're going to sand 100 pieces down, it's easier just to make the mold over. Now with all those little changes and little areas filled in, ready for the Brodack primer. Okay, now we'll just put this aside to dry before we make up the next part of this mold. But I think that's going to make a big improvement, and since we intend to make many of these parts, anything I can do to avoid having to do final finishing on them, every time I sand this part, in essence, I'm sanding every part that I'm going to make out of this mold. Well, you can just put it up with all the other molds up here. It's drying up. Well, I can't work on that for the next couple hours. I want to do a little work on getting some rough idea of what fittings I'm going to need to do and get the cowl edge on the bottom of this bottom block. Now I have 4 of these parts already at various thicknesses to experiment with, but obviously I'm going to, at the end of this, know how many layers of carbon I need when I mold up these in production. Elliot's got a couple of them, I have one. We've made a lot of prototypes here, so we don't know which one actually we're going to use yet. But I want to make the edging and check for all the fits and start figuring out maybe how I'm going to get the cowl to mount. All of those little things. And one of the things I want to emphasize is everything I try to do, and I guess it's just a habit from my whole work life of running small businesses, always have something drying while you're doing some kind of work. I'd never want to do this work first. Always get something drying, some primer drying, some molds drying, whatever. And of course the most important thing, something has to be drying while you're having a good cup of coffee. That's the best part of the whole day. Now, I took one of the pieces at random. I really don't know which one I'm going to use yet. I've been trying to make these up again in various little differences in the way I laid a cloth in a mold. But I have enough of them that if I cut one up and I'm not happy with it, I can, obviously just drop back and punt. But it looks like I have a reasonably nice fit around the cowl, reasonably nice fit along here. Now, one of the things I want to do, and again, I didn't know until I actually laid one of these up how I want to do this, but I want to put an edge on here, some kind of an edge. Because again, this piece is going to basically get dropped back on in one piece, kind of like a funny car body. And I really want to have as good a fit as I possibly can here. So this is one of the things I need to think about for a few minutes. See, in the past, what I've done is taken 64th plywood and put it along the edge here, and that always seems to work. But again, because I need to do this over and over again, I wasn't real first off, I wasn't real sure these parts would fit this well. It looks like they fit real well, so maybe I'm a little bit ahead of the game here and I don't even realize it. But I want to figure out what I want to do about my edging first. That's the first thought I have before I do the hold downs. Original thought was to make one bottom block that fit both planes. It's because these are so quick to make and so easy. A couple hours of laying them up and maybe half a yard of material. I'm just going to make one for each plane, which will have its own. I won't have to worry about then all of the little alignment and all little things that'll be like the paint lines going through at the same spot and everything. But imagine now if you had to carve this up, what you'd be looking at to carve two of these and hollow them and put all the screws in there, like Rich Jacobone is doing, by the way. It's taking him 2 weeks to carve the bottom block. Now I can see I need to get a little bit of a, in other words, when I want the nose ring to line up perfectly, I just need to shave just a little bit of an ice shaving off the back there to get that even. And also I can see another thing. This piece is just maybe a 64th high here, so I'm going to take a whole 64th off the top because I want to have one perfectly straight line if possible. It just makes making that joint, making that line a little easier. So the first thing is I want to take this little ice shaving off here. Take the majority of it off at one of the quarter cables. The point is I would want to take the most amount off. Get my little sanding block here. And I'll do the final fit with a block, of course. Now because I haven't really gone through this whole type of assembly before, I need to, again, think about it. I always take little breaks and think about how I want to do this. Because to a certain degree, I'm inventing this as I go along, how I want to go about doing this. And what's real helpful is, once I find the best way, a year from now, I can just go back and look at the video and say, oh, that's how I made the roundels, that's how I did this, that, whatever. But the first thing I need to get that carbon piece to give me a real good alignment. And I'll take that material off little by little by little here. You can see with that piece, right? See this piece is just maybe a 64th higher. I need to take an ice shaving right off the top. Well, probably a 64th of an inch will do it. Kind of stuff you can use on any kind of a cowl or hatch fit. Same technology, same basic. Look for the high spot, take out the high spot, and try to get as many of the edges lined with either carbon fiber or 64th plywood as possible. Looks like taking that little amount off would be the next step. Notice I'm just lowering it in, trying to pick up the high spots so that this piece will fit as close. In other words, the choices are you can fill in the low spots or you can shave off the high spots. What I'm doing is fine-tuning this whole edge, shaving off the high spots as I go. Again, I like to take the biggest amount of a cut, and the final thing, finish it off with a sanding block. Just trying to take the last little bit off and get that line perfectly level. Now, as soon as I notice I started at the front, I'll get this fit, this, and then start from the front on the opposite side until that whole piece is laying down and all of these edges are relatively tight fits. I don't want to have a fit with a half-inch gap so you can fill a tank without taking a cowling off. The next thing, I put a piece of tape front to back because I have a little bit of a high spot here. I check this edge, it's relatively straight, so I know the high spot is in the wood. we're probably talking about a 1/64 of an inch. And I can look right down the edge and I can see where I'm hitting. And it's right about, in the middle. And the tape shows that to be the high spot. It's right about here. Now because this is a smaller amount, I won't bother using a machine. And I can just go back and forth. And it wouldn't matter if you're doing an ordinary cowling or regular shaped cowling or cardinal cowling at SC11. It's sheetrock work. I always use that word. If you've never done sheetrock work, count yourself as one of the lucky people in the world. Actually, we're getting ready to start renovating a bathroom upstairs, so not looking forward to it. Now let's see if we got that high spot out. I just want to double check this with my straight edge before we go on to the other side. What's hard is when you get right down to the last thing, there's always a spot where the light isn't shining through. That's pretty good. And once I have the edge, obviously just do the other side off camera. The last little thing, not a little thing, but what I want to do, I want to take an old, one of my favorite things, some of these blocks that come in a little bit too heavy to put in kits, take some sticky back paper, make myself up a very long block. Of course, needless to say, you want it to be a relatively straight block. It just turns out most of the blocks that are too heavy are pretty straight. Now I'll just kill the corners, radius the corners off. And I'll use this for the final little, because don't forget I have to do, well, two, I have to do more than two. But I'll need a block like this, where the whole length of the block is always handy to have. And I used to always have one of these. I know somebody borrowed it. Won't mention their name. But when I need it, it's not here. So we'll just make up another one. Because I'm a great guy. I don't know about that part of it, Artnowski. Anyway, once I get that, before you ever use a block like this, especially on balsa wood, because it's soft, you don't want to have it catch an edge. You just kind of dress off the edge. And we'll use this for the rest of the construction of the plane, for just truing up these long cowl edges. Now, if you're ever in doubt what a high spot is, you can take an ink marker, run an ink marker down the edge here, and then as you sand, you'll pick off the high spot. If you want it to really be cute, you could put a bar going this way. In fact, we may do this. Put a block going this way so it's like a T, and that keeps it from warping if you get humidity in the cellar or whatever. I want to get all these fixed right, really accurate, before I go on to the next step. Now I have a relatively nice even amount here, and I want to line this edge with 64th plywood. That's the next step here. I want the first piece of this edging to go in with the grain, cross grain. This will give me a lot of support. Get this right on the edge of the glass. Get right in the edge. Now you could glue little strips along the edge, but it's easier, if I find it easier, if you just put the whole piece in and then grind out what you don't need. Now I leave that piece in there because that'll give me some real support while I'm making up this nose attachment piece. And again, I'm trying to come up with a system that I can replicate, because one of the criteria with this whole thing is I want to be able to take the engine and pipe out just like in the I-beam Spitfire, all in one shot. So I'm trying to make it very similar to that. And now I can get some more final fitting. I mentioned many times on the tape how rough this winter has been, and it's been rougher than I ever could have imagined. I came out to my pond, and I've been real careful about checking that the fish are okay every day. And it looks like we've lost many of them, and I'm really ready to cry here. I'll tell you, they look like they're certainly not moving. They're either frozen in the ice solid, or boy, I can't tell you how unhappy I am. I don't know how thick this ice goes down, but I know typically the koi make it through the winter. It looks like, and my friend Joe Carabello, he lost every one of his fish due to the rough winter. It looks like we've at least lost some of them or all of them. Oh, broken hearted. And I guess this is what makes video so important to me, is all the fun we had with these fish over the past 5 years that we've had the pond, 4 years. Now the only memory I have of most of them is, well, maybe all of them, I don't know. They made it through 3 or 4 winters, but I guess this winter was just too much between the cold and the rain and the snow and the... Oh, God, I can't believe it. It looks like they're all floating sideways. Oh, can't tell you how this hurts. Now, I really don't know, you know, the people that watch the videos are usually my personal close friends, and I don't even know how to express it, because this has I've never lost all the fish like this at one time. You can see here one of the pictures I have, they were just babies. But we really have had a rough winter, and I don't know what that means in the future. I don't know if any of them are still alive, but the ones that are floating at the top sideways, I guess we're not going to finish working on that plane today. We'll just have to come back tomorrow. Now, ironically enough, I might have the only fish in the world that get Christmas cards and birthday cards, and I save them all right by my indoor tank, and out of about 40 or 50 fish, these are the only 2 that I know are still alive, but I don't know. They made it through 3 winters or 4 winters, I'm not sure, but boy, I'll tell you, no way you can work on an airplane today. Anyway, for all the people that enjoyed and shared the fish with me and shared Bert and Ernie and the saga of Bert, the late Bert and Ernie. But I know tomorrow I'll have to get back to, it's just hard. Just hard to get back to work. There's something about the fish, and I really don't know how to explain it. I don't even know how to, people that don't enjoy fish, I don't know how to explain the little dimension they add to your life. And my world is kind of hectic. And when I sit down here every night or every morning or whenever and feed the fish and share a little time with them, share the fish in the pond, just like it's a special time. And I guess I should be thankful for all the good times I've had. The many years I've had with the fish that are in the pond. Each one of them had a name. I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. Well, we had a terrible day yesterday. I don't even know how to explain. I'm still in some kind of shock, and I figure a cup of coffee, maybe getting back to working on the model. See, and I don't know that this is true. I don't know if I'm sharing something with you that you already know or that you should be teaching me. I don't know. You lose a pet, you really lose a friend. And there's something about the model planes that, and at least in my case, they help me get over some of the really, that's certainly not the only thing in my life that's happened lately, but helps you get over the bad times. Now we're going to try to get some work done today. Now, boy, even with all the bad news I've had in the last couple of days, it was really nice to look in the mail and see some more Skyfire videos. This is 97. It looks like we're rounding out the whole set here. I hope pretty soon we're going to have the whole set. And again, if anybody really has a love of Reno air racers, boy, this is where you want to get your tapes from. Boy, they are the best. And actually, at a tragic time like we've just had, this can really help take your mind off the problems of life. I really appreciate everybody that's contributed tapes into our ongoing library of Reno air race stuff. This set here has some footage of the late pond racer. Rick Brickard was killed in this plane. Just stuff. Now see, thanks to video, if you didn't have a video of this, if you didn't have a video of the fish, you could never go back and get this. Once it's gone, without video, it's gone forever. Now I'm trying to get back into figuring out this the way I want to hold this cowling down. Now, first thing I want to do is, this is 1/4 inch tape, just leave about a 1/4 inch of the plywood on there. And by putting this in one piece, I've at least got some good chance that it's in at a perfectly flat angle. And a little wizard makes doing this relatively easy. Now I just have these pieces tacked in here with thin CA. We're going to eventually put that secondary bond epoxy in here. The next part of this, now I have this piece in pretty well. I want to lay out what's going to be the nose ring. Now I wanted to turn this similar to the Spitfire, the I-beam Spitfire, where I still can get the engine out. I don't want to have a complete nose ring. I want to have 2 pins along the edge. But the first thing I wanted to do is get absolutely a tight a fit as possible and leave just enough room. Now I'll make up a 1/2 nose ring with the 64th plywood with the grain all going in the same direction. I want most of the grain going back and forth to give me the rigidity. But then I'm going to cut this little piece out so that my 2 pins are off to the side and I can take the motor out in one piece. It looks like it'll take about 3, with that lip back, about 3 layers to get it right. Now I can just use this piece, and I'll use the cowling to actually hold it in place. And I need to make up, I'm guessing, 3 or 4 laminations, all the grain going side to side. With this laminate here, because I want to get a nice accurate fit, what I'll do is I'll hold this in position, put a little piece of Teflon sheet in between, put some 5-minute epoxy just to tack this in position up here. But this ring will actually hold this so that they're totally parallel. Now that paper will just keep the part from gluing itself to the nose ring while this dries. As soon as that dries, we'll trim it all in. I have tape holding the block in alignment, but this part is actually holding its own nose ring in alignment. Now with that piece glued in, you can see the objective here was to use this angle and that angle to get a perfect alignment in this piece. And the next thing is I'll go over to the table and just Dremel off all the extra material. Okay, with that piece trimmed away, now the next thing, I want to lay out the way I want to cut this nose ring. And again, I need to kind of invent this as I kind of figure it out as I go along. Invent's not the right word. I want to have that hole down. The objective is so I can take the engine, pipe, spinner, prop, everything, including the needle valve already set, whenever I want to do maintenance on the plane. Next thing, I kind of laid this out a lot of different ways, and I'm going to just take the old Zona saw, cut this piece of the nose ring off, and then this part here will be where I locate my pins. Oh, I always try to get this piece because I want to use this piece on the other half. So I try to make a real nice, neat cut, which usually means it doesn't come out as neat as I want. I have to make the part over again. objective was, as always, that when this is all together in one piece, and boy, I didn't miss it by much. We can get that out in one piece. Want to be able to take it out in one piece and replace the whole cowling. And needless to say, I'll put that little filler piece back in when I'm all done with the pins. And that's the objective so far. This is all taped together on center line. I want to drill this, and I drill just a little bit, the slightest bit up. If you put them straight, it's just real hard to get that to catch back on. I need to have just the slightest little bit of angle up for the pins. And I want to make sure I can hopefully hold these in position. I'm trying not to push so that at the last second it grabs and goes right through. There we go. Just want to get a little angle up. Slightest little angle up. Now I can make up the pins. Now when I set those pins in, I'm going to tack them in because you think it's not going to matter if they have a little angle in them, but without that angle it really gets difficult to put that cowling on and off. An important lesson I learned from the I-beam Spitfire. So I need to make up two little pins, two little pieces of 1/8 inch wire, and just set them in here temporarily. I made this little piece, put that on there, and I want to make sure that I can get that snap on there. Before I can do any more real fitting, I have to cut this piece out. I'm just going to Dremel it out so that I can put this piece in with the engine in place. Now, usually cutting through a carbon part with a tapered bit is the easiest way. Then I'll grind off the last little bit. Okay, that looks like we have the hole, and we can use the exact hole right off of the part that we molded. Now obviously the final fit here, once I get all the cowl hold downs figured out, then the last thing I'll do is blend the last part of this fuselage in. I've left that a little bit oversized for now.
Got a brand new cowling, a DC7 cowling, and ring and everything to go on, so that's easy.
The last thing I got to do today was just put in two little pads. What I'm thinking I may have to do, and I want to think about this overnight, is have two little pins coming out of the bottom, and I can obviously figure that part out relatively easily. Figure out how I want to do some pins, because this gets, once we cut the hole for the air intake and everything, this is going to get spongy. But anyway, we'll have time to think about this tonight, and we'll pick this up tomorrow morning. Now today, and I'm not so sure I'm going to be happy with this, but it's certainly something I wanted to try. I wanted to try putting little, see, here's what I'm afraid of, and I've thought about this overnight, that this would not be a nice solid operation going on here. So what I wanted to try is, I'm going to try to take these two little, I put two little pieces of plywood in here, and I want to try to put some locating pins, or maybe put the pins in there, I'm not sure. I need to make the equivalent piece in the top block so that I can somehow confine this, either with pins or dowels or whatever. So the first thing I'm going to do is level these off. This is dried overnight, the epoxy's dry. You just basically level these off. Again, once I see how I want to do this, and maybe that I need more than two, I'm going to start by just trying to get two locating pins in here. This will also add a little rigidity a little triangulation to the corner at, in other words, if I'm going to put them somewhere, I want to put them where they're going to add some strength. I real carefully just precision drilled those holes so that my aluminum, this is an aluminum tube, and this is a press fit in. Now I want to cut two little pieces of this that are just protruding off just a little bit higher than this, and then what I'm going to do is make a former to go right on top of this. You can see these little pieces of tubing, I etched the back part of it, the part that's going to go in the wood, so that the glue would get a little bit better bite. Okay, now the next step is I'm going to make that former that's going to go across just wide enough that I can drop the shell right on top of it. I can just take a piece of this light ply, line it up, and take some impressions where those two tubes are sticking up. You can see the little impression, and I can drill this out. Even easier, I put a little bit of an ink marker on the end of the tubing and then just pressed it down. So this gives me the alignment of the two holes. Obviously I'm going to have to cut away the middle of this eventually, but this will give me the alignment and get the right spread on rather than doing each one individually. This kind of acts as a support while we're gluing this in place. Now I'll trim this oversize, and so that when I just drop the shell on, it makes a perfect fit. See, what I'm doing is I'm going to have the pins hold this in place while the whole cowling piece is in place. This pins will actually locate this part, because if this is even off just a little bit, it's also going to hold it in 90-degree alignment. So all these things are in alignment. It's kind of a self-aligning jig. And believe me, I thought about this all night, maybe for the last couple of nights, trying to figure a way of holding these pins in alignment, something that I could be happy with, because again, I'm going to have to replicate this possibly in the back. I'm not sure yet, but this will be, and also the other advantage is there'll be no screws showing out the top. So as this part obviously comes down, it's going to hit those locating pins. Once I have these in alignment and I have them perfectly 90 degrees, because if these are even off on a little angle, it's going to, then I'll make some little supports inside. Now I just need to make sure I have the amount trimmed here so these parts ride flush. And when I glue this piece on, I'll put a little piece of that Teflon sheet in between so that any of the glue that oozes out is not going to work its way down here. Now I'm just going to put the glue right on the very edge, because I only really need to tack this in position. I don't need to have a permanent joint. Why? Once I can get inside and build supports, then I can build a good glue fillet. Once I make sure that's going to fit real nice too. But the little Teflon sheet will keep it from gluing it. But imagine now, anybody that's making a cowling, any kind of cowling, you want to have the support in place holding the cowling in place. If you do this the other way, boy, you always wind up with something crooked. At least I do. I always try to have that the support is going to locate the part, and then I can get the part if one side is closer or one side is further away. But that support is that's going to be a critical thing. If that's off even a 1/64 of an inch, this thing is going to be twisted. All right, I'm going to glue this up and then we'll let it dry. Okay, we'll give that 15 minutes or so for that to dry up. And I just want to make sure I have a good, and I trimmed off that piece of Teflon so that there's no way I can glue this. I shouldn't say no way, there's less chance I can glue that. Anyway, what I want to check is that before I go on, notice I'm working from one end down. I want to make sure that I have this fit. This is solid, this will now be solid, and I want to see what I can do about that and possibly put 1 or 2 screws in the back, some kind of gizmo in the back to do the ultimate holding of it on. Now in today's mail, while I'm waiting for the epoxy to dry, check this out. This is from Bill Fry. He's got a very complicated finishing system using automotive paint and dope. I'm not sure I even understand how he did it. Gold film dropped, shaded with bulletin enamel. Hey, but it doesn't matter. Inventing this stuff is half the fun. He also made a Strega. And Bill, I hope you'll keep feeding us pictures. Hope you'll enjoy These models, I'll tell you, they look pretty good to me. Anyway, from Bill Fry. A Strager and a Cardinal, can you imagine? Maybe we could sell them the Brooklyn Bridge next. Hey, Bill, build a Miss Ashley. Got a real nice note from Al Rabe with some ideas on his control system. And I'm going to share it with Gerald Champ since he's very interested in this and very interested in Mustangs. I hope Al doesn't mind. Anyway, look, we've seen this picture already, but this is the Spitfire. And what he did, well, he sent me some other pictures. These are much larger. These are great. The oil cap picture. And we know what that feels like. Anyway, and a real detail shot of how he made the wing on the rod. On the rods, I should say. I haven't seen this picture before, but I'll leave this on the screen for a second or so. Very interesting. Notice the airfoil has that almost constant curve, very similar to the one we're using. And he's got the horn that's wrapped around the trailing edge. All the material that's hollowed out here. A lot of cool little innovative stuff going on here. The landing gear, the shock-mounted gear. Anyway, I'm glad that Al's in. Let me just show these plans up on. Al had at one time, according to the note, a plan to make a Mark 24 Spitfire that was all fiberglass, all composite construction. Well, I don't know that it's a reality yet because I haven't done it, but I hope it's going to be in the next 2 or 3 years that it'll be possible to make anything. Let's hope anyway. And even if we can't do it, it won't be because we didn't try or because we didn't dream. Now this is from Al's original drawings. That would be interesting. Look at a rudder shape like Joe Adamusky's got the incline patterns on there. What would really be interesting is to lay this out on top of a set of our plans, just to get an idea what they look like, what the comparison is of the Moment arms. And I'm sure this is more scale, because I can see already it's got dihedral and a lower wing placement, more scale. The exhaust stacks, hey, the Griffin blisters, just what we're working on right now, remaking that mold. Anyway, from Al Rabe, and boy, Al, I hope you build one. That's all I can say. I'll be able to help you any way I can, of course, but I really, really appreciate all that you've done for the hobby, the things you've published. Believe me, it's information we all have enjoyed over the years. Loved your planes. Okay, this had plenty of dry time. Can pull off the tape and let's see if this is going to work. And get rid of this. Now that little piece is already in there. And of course I'm going to run some supports in there and get some of that real high-tech secondary bonding epoxy in there. But this is what I wanted to see. Once this was... Is this going to be convenient, or is this going to be a pain? See? I don't know if that's going to be a pain. I guess I was wrong. Okay, now that also keeps it sliding front to back. So that's one other thing that's good. Now it seems solid enough there. Up here I could live with that. Back here, because it's thicker, I can live with that too. So I just need to see what I'm going to do in the back now. Here is make some little triangles. I'm going to mirror that shape and get 2 little supports on each side, and then I can trim this off. Now, obviously, because the pipe's going to, but this will hold this in a 90-degree alignment for that whole time that I'm working on that. That shape in each corner. Good way to hold these little pieces while you tack gluing them in, and I'm just going to tack glue them in. Just a few drops of CA because I'm going to build inside here once I cut this piece apart. Maybe what I'll do is at the end of the workday, I'll fill this area in here with that real good high-tech secondary bonding epoxy. Maybe put a little chopped carbon fiber in there just to build up this little area. But I think that'll work fine. I'll put one on the other side too, and I can sand that down. Ultimately, that's what I wound up with, and I'm not going to do it till the end of the day, and then I'll get in there with a mixture. I'll chop up some carbon fiber tow and some of the real good secondary bonding resin, and just fill that little void in there. And I probably at that point in time can grind the wood away. I guess it doesn't even matter. But anyway, that part of it, That way, I wasn't sure if this was really going to work the way I wanted it to or not. I wanted it to put a little bit of pressure forward, but that looks like it's, well, for now. And of course the next thing is I have to work out the back. First thing I want to do is lay out a little spot in here for a former. I marked on the end how far back this came. I think it's going to work okay. These things I'm always skeptical about until I actually make one. Then the second one goes relatively quickly. All right, I need to lay out, probably a piece of light ply is good enough back here for this. And we don't really need anything fancy back here. I just want to get this piece level. Put a little bit of an angle on it, thinking I could get this to act as a reinforcement back here. I had this really cool idea in the back of my mind. I have a little bomb release, an RC bomb release that has a pin. You just pull a pin and I was thinking, I'll be able to do it, and I'm thinking, don't get too cute. This is always the point in time where you say, oh, why did I do that? Okay, and you still need to get a blind nut under there. So what I need to do is tack this in position. But the first thing I need to do is make a line on it so I can get it back in alignment. Once I'm done, I can get that alignment back. Make the equivalent former of that. Probably going to have to put a little bit of an angle in it on the edges. And I'll tack glue that underneath here. Just going to see if this is going to slide in. I doubt it. No, I'm going to have to take, what I'm going to have to do is angle off. I always anticipate the day I'm going to make cowling mold mounts and things like this that, there it goes, look at this. Of course he's a surgeon, he has his stuff right here. Oh, come on. I always figure how long this is going to take, and it takes 9 times as long. But then when I'm done, I say, hey, pretty cool. Boy, it's good to see Al Rabe back active, I'll tell you. I always look forward to a letter from Al. Okay, that looks like it'll fit. Okay. And this piece will hold this in alignment while I drill a hole. Keep this from gluing to the original part. Whoops. I just don't want to glue one part to the other. And since this is just being tacked in, I was laying this out, John Brodak called and told me the first samples of Miss Ashley Red, direct from Randolph, are in the mix. And we should have them in a few days. And and some of the Candy Apple Purple that Midgley's been testing and Bob Gieske's been testing. Okay, now the next thing is I need to drill a hole with these 2 pieces in place. Drill right through so that this piece lines up the hole for this piece. Using this as my alignment to line it up. We're using a 256 screw and blind nut. I want to make sure I have a precision. This is an 086 drill. I don't want to have a big sloppy hole so that I can rattle around. The same thing with the blind nuts. I want to make sure I don't have a big sloppy hole because these are small screws. To open up this hole, and I can line it right back with that alignment little tabs, and that should be a real good alignment. See, I don't want to make these holes any bigger than they have to be. I like that to be a nice tight fit in the back. I just got to get the blind nut on there. Put some oil on the blind nut, a couple of drops of chain lube or something so that blind nut, we put CA around it, doesn't wick in there and ruin the threads. Before I ever put any blind nut in, I always like to get that little bit of chain lube on there. Make sure it covers all the threads. Leave the bolt in place when I... Whoa! Do I have dropsies today or what? That little bit of oil always saves you a lot of grief. Alright, now this is ready to glue in. Now once that dries, I'll get a little bead inside too. And again, we'll use the big block. Now the next step is I need to open this little hole up just enough I can get the screw in. Get a little washer down here. Tack glue that in place. Okay, now with that little washer permanently on there, okay, now the last little thing I want to do, once this is in place, okay, she's in place nice. I think that's going to work fine. Because this will take a beating, I want to put a little piece of tubing around here, and I also don't want to be able to press down. And then I'm going to fill in the back here with a little piece of former. That'll reinforce that kind of nice. Okay, now all I need to do now, once the glue dries, trim that off, make that little bulkhead in the back, and then see if I need to add some stiffeners up. Finally put that little bulkhead on. Now I just need to trim that off with the Dremel. I like the way that laid out with the little aluminum tube. It keeps from having, well, every time you take the bolt out, that you put a big chunk missing. Even though the carbon is probably better than balsa, I'm used to dealing with the balsa just losing its edge. Real happy with the way this worked out. And the only thing now, I have that hard spot up here. I'm going to try to replicate something similar to that, because this is still, don't forget, you got a long, this is probably a 25-inch or so piece of material, and I just don't want to have this loose right here. I'm going to go so that none of it will be on the wing. Right at the back of the fuselage here looks like the right place to put that. And I'll do it off camera. I'm just going to replicate the same little pieces of tubing that are up there. Okay, this was just kind of a replication of what we had done. The same little hard points down there, same points up in the shell. Let me get the phone. Okay, these little guys worked out real well. Now, of course, at the end of the day, I'm going to put that epoxy in there. I'll just pack some in there. I'm not really comfortable without having that real good double bonding epoxy. Now, next thing I want to do, now that I have this relatively under control, I want to put the header and the pipe in, figure out where the pipe mount is going to go. Maybe even today, before the day's out, get some of the holes cut for the air outlets. Now, since we've never had the hardware in here yet, I want to check all the fits very carefully as I put this together. Okay, we got that. And now the next thing is I want to set up the tune pipe mount in the back of the wing, right on the very back of the wing. Now I just need to know how much of this is going to stick out the back of that before I, well, may have to cut quite a bit of that scoop away. I don't know yet. It looks like it almost... I'm laughing because things like this never work out for me. They always work the other way. But it looks like basically the whole thing almost all fits in there. Wow, is that unusual? we know the position of the tune pipe mount, where it's actually going to be, I want to laminate up some 64th plywood, get the exact center, get a 440 blind nut in there, and then position this as close to the hinge line as I can. That looks like where this is going to wind up going. And mark this spot. Now I'll cut this piece of 16th sheet out because I want this to be attached all around the edge, and it needs to go on a little bit of an angle forward, or else the tune pipe mount comes up. This needs to be on a 90-degree angle here, so I need to chamfer that little pipe mount and just put the screw in and make sure the screw is facing straight up when I set that in. Now, one of the things I want to do is get the tune pipe mount as low as possible, because I don't want the pipe sticking out the bottom of the plane. I'd like to get it to lay right down in position as close as I can. And remember, the pipes that I make have a little bit of a bend in them, so obviously I want to have that bend so it works to my advantage. I made these little faired reinforcements. Well, I've seen these pipe mounts come loose, so I'm not going to play too cute. That's not a great place. I want to start saving a gram or two. And now I want to cut the intake and exhaust holes on the bottom. And I'm going to mix up some more of the secondary bonding resin. Actually, I'm getting pretty adept at mixing it by the fraction of a gram. Anyway, what I'm going to do is make some chop of a piece of carbon and make a paste that I can paint on the edges of those little boxes that I have, just as a way of reinforcing it. Now, I'm not sure. I originally thought I had more time, but my lovely wife has advised me it's supper time, so I'm rushing to get this done. Anyway, do you ever do that when you're building and all of a sudden you turn around and it's the end of the session? So anyway, what I want to do with this material, basically I wanted to show this. I'll just do one where these little pieces are, and I'm going to chop up some carbon fiber and just pack it in there. But this is the resin that in theory should be good for this. It'll also fuel proof it a little bit. And when I come back tomorrow, this should all be dry. Now another thing, I put a bend in the flux brush because I want to get up under that little edge. And again, you can just take a little piece of carbon fiber overage and just chop it up, pack it right into that joint. And this is a good way that I know of as good a way as any to make up just a little bit of paste to put in the corners. Stir this up and make my own kind of little carbon fiber filler here. And you can use a little toothpick, anything, flux brush, anything you can use. Just pack a little bit of that. And you can make a little, once that area is wet. Anyway, tomorrow this will all be dry, and we'll basically be looking at getting all the venting in. Okay, that's sitting up by the heating vent overnight. Tomorrow we'll cut all the holes, try to get that nose scoop in too. Alright, today's mission, should we decide to accept, I want to lay out the holes on this. Let me get a real close idea of where this is going to exhaust from. I guess the easiest way is to just start at the back. Make sure that's centered. Now what I want to do, I want to lay this out in tape before I actually make the cut. And I'll make it smaller than I think it should be, and then enlarge it little by little by little. Again, this is one of the things. Now on the I-beam Spitfire, we had to make a big hole up where the header was, but part of that was that we never left enough clearance up there. This plane has enough clearance, which probably means it's going to need a hole there anyway. Taking all this and I can move this around. It's always good to start with this hole here, just a little smaller than it should be. I've learned this the hard way too. I don't want to make it any bigger than I have to. But that's going to be about where we start off with. Now I like to hold this tool on about a 45-degree angle. Be real careful not to ingest any of this carbon dust. And I'll do the final little trimming. That's what I like about having two of these little guys. Alright, now I've made that a little smaller than I wanted to on purpose. And now I'm going to enlarge it further forward and widen it just a little bit because I want to have a lot of choices and I want plenty of air flowing through there. But it's always good to start with a little hole, not a big hole. And I always lay it out in tape first before I make the enlargement. It always allows me to look down the center and make sure I have it on center. This will allow me to do is make pipes with stingers coming out here or angled up with the rubber piece or multiple stingers. You know, we'll have a lot of choices of pipes here when time comes. Basically doing the front part of the scoop, just a mirror image of the back, making it bigger and bigger little by little until I get the size and shape that I want. Little by little this hole is taking shape, and of course I want to make sure it's symmetrical. Relatively easy. I just put the notch in where I thought the needle valve, looking down this. Again, this is not a standard jet. This has the needle valve going right through the body of the motor. This is a special one that George made up. But this is the one that we're probably going to start the plane off, and obviously I'm going to have to drill a hole for the other needle valve in the cowling eventually when I use that motor. Now that I have the whole thing put together, I've uncovered another little gremlin. See, these are the things you can't really tell. Now obviously on the second one, we'll know about this. All of the holes and things are fine. Everything looks like it's going to work fine. The only problem is there's no pressure pushing this down now. This is just I just feel like it's an accident waiting to happen. So what I'm going to try to do is take the two pins and use those as locating pieces and get two screws in here. I know I'm going to sleep better at night. Again, it's like that. We really don't know this until we put the plane together, but that's one of the things. I didn't envision a piece this big. It just seems like, well, the same as that wing mounting. After I put it together with two screws, I said, oh boy. I thought one screw, well, I've never had a piece this big. And the other choice would be to get screws under the spinner. I don't know about that, but I'm going to try to just use those two pins. I'll drill them out and use those as locating screws. See if I like that better. I'm going to just drill right through these pins and then try to get 256 blind nuts up underneath there. Should have done this right in the beginning, but again, the middle of the winter when there's snow on the ground, you always have these illustrious, grandiose ideas, and then you find out as soon as spring comes you wish you had put those extra bolts in. So let's put them in. heated these with a soldering iron and then just pull them out with a plier. See, I'm depending on the fact that these holes are aligned. When I put the blind nuts, I hope I can get them in there, that I won't have another alignment problem. It'll line back up the way it should. The epoxy on that's drying. Now I just need to make the little holes in that top block, bottom block. And I'll do the same thing I did in the back with the aluminum tube. Make it look like a nice finished edge when I'm done. Well, this afternoon I did what had to be very painful and inevitable. I needed to cut a hole in the ice, and you can see just how thick that ice. I took a piece out here. And of all things, I counted the fish as I took them out. They're all buried in the garden, and this way when we see the plants grow in the spring, we kind of know they're there. But anyway, I know the people that share the videos and share our lives together. You really can't know somebody unless you share the bad times too. You can't just be the world champion or whatever. And I guess part of this is all the joy that we've gotten from these fish. Now, there's one amazing thing, and this is the only reason I'm putting this on tape. There's one absolutely, something even I can't believe. There's one fish still alive. And it's just the most ironic thing of all that these two guys are in the house. They weren't out in the pond. And that they're a pair and they're mating. But this is amazing to me. This guy, the last one, and you can see I don't hold out a lot of hope for him, because in essence what we're doing is shocking him. But he's definitely still alive. And I'm going to hope that, hey, right now I got to hope that he's going to make it. And that from that whole pond of about 60 fish, including the babies, we really still have 3 to start building our stock with next year if this guy makes it. Come on, brother, pull through. Anyway, to get back to working on the plane, we're going to have to true up these tubes. And I'll tell you what I've been doing is all the while I've been working on this, the last hour or so, I've been babysitting that bucket over there and seeing if that guy, I've tried to save some baby birds with mixed results. And I don't know that I'm going to be successful about saving that one fish. But boy, that to me, that is amazing. Anyway, again, thanks for joining us. And I hope you're not upset by sharing that episode of The Fish with me. So many people have been concerned since, I don't know, I guess since the word went out earlier this week. I've gotten several really nice calls from people. We miss Bert and Ernie, we miss the fish. But I know that life has to go on. And sometimes, after a tragedy like this, you get back down the shop, and it takes your mind off the pain. And maybe someday, remembering what happened to me, you'll be able to get through a tough time too. And let's hope there are no more of them in the future, ever, for any of us.
Of the stars in your eyes.
Anyway, we'll be back down here working on this guy.
When I look in
It's been a rough couple of days for me.
but it's going to be Pardue and Brown as they come off that pylon number 6. Will that Centaurus 2,700 cubic inches and some change be able to hold on to that Bearcat? And it looks like Howard Pardue has managed, coming off the 6th pylon, to gain a little bit on him, and it looks like he's got it. And then the 51 is starting to challenge. Starting to challenge Kurt Brown. So there goes your winner of the bronze, unofficially. Here comes Howard.